James chapter 3. I want to look at our end of this chapter, though I'm kind of including this chapter in it because it is a discussion that James is having with the exiles of the Jewish race that are also trying to follow Christ. He is talking to them about how important it is to live what you believe. Don't say you believe it and then not practice it. Don't, in other words, as he said in chapter 3, don't be flowing salt water and spring water out of the same fountain, because that's confusing. That's not right. That ought not to be. And so he's speaking against that. But I want to begin with verse 13 here, because this is the heart of that passage and the heart of what I want to share with you. He says in verse 13, "Who is wise and understanding among you? Let him show it." Notice that? Not who's going to brag about it. They're going to brag about how smart they are. You should probably let it go in one ear after the other. But show it by his good conduct, that his works are done in the meekness of wisdom. If you have bitter envy, self-seeking in your hearts, do not boast and lie against the truth. This wisdom does not descend from above. So the wisdom that brags, the wisdom that has envy, the wisdom that's seeking what's best for you, the wisdom that boasts and lies against the truth, that is not from above. That's not the way heaven works. Here's how he describes it. It's earthly. It's here. It is everywhere. It's the way people live. It's earthly. It's sensual, meaning it's my feelings, what I feel in the moment. James knew about it in that day too. If it feels good, no, you don't necessarily need to do it. It's sensual, going with your feelings. And even more scary, it's demonic. For where envy and self-seeking exists, confusion and every evil thing are there. That's the wisdom this world uses. That's how it operates. But let's look at the opposite, verse 17. But the wisdom that is from above. And this is not just stuff to put in your head. This is the way you live, how you live. The wisdom that's from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, willing to yield, full of mercy and good fruits, without partiality and without hypocrisy. And now the fruit of righteousness is sown in peace by those who make peace. So we have the worldly wisdom that ends in the demonic, and you have, beginning in verse 16, or actually verse 17, you have it being reversed by not demonic, but it's pure and peaceable and following. A reversal by the wisdom of heaven. And I want to ask us, Tim Challis wrote a blog that I read this week, and it talked about positive purity. And I want us to think about that for a few moments this morning. Father, we thank you for the greatness of your glory. Thank you, God, that we can sing about it. Father, what would inspire people to write such songs? What would inspire people both decades ago and very current to write songs praising you? What would inspire people to come out on a rainy day and to sit and to listen and to be involved? What would inspire that? I say it's God Almighty this day. You are the inspirer. You are the one who gives us hope and gives us light and gives us peace and gives us joy and gives us all that our hearts have craved for. For you have created our hearts to long for you. And God, you do satisfy. So Lord Jesus, as we look into your word and in it glimpse your greatness, may we simply long for more. And Father, I ask your blessings on your people, and for your people and their devotion to be increased in your presence. We pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen. We are living in a day where mostly purity is not talked about. It has almost a negative connotation, which is why his article really is not following anything in his article, Tim Challis, but just that concept, positive purity. Now, it has encroached into some areas. You go into your grocery store and you walk through that aisle that used to be just the produce section. It doesn't look like a produce section anymore. They try to make it look like a farmer's market. They even have a rain. Some of them even have the nice lightning and thunder as if it's being piped in right to your vegetables right before you get them. We talk about clean eating. That's all Panera Bread's got going for it. You can eat clean food, whatever that means. They mean there's something pure about the way they prepare it, something pure about the way they farm it and the way they get it to your table. And that is such a big entity in the food world. And you can't say it's not even in the beverage community because while most just use filtered water, look at you have a whole section of nothing but water. I mean, it's all clear from top to bottom. But you can get it from Fiji. You can get it from North Carolina. You can get it from the Alps. You can get it from everywhere because they're all saying something. You can drink our dirty water. No, that's not what they're saying. Our water's just a little purer. Just a little better. And we like that. We want that going into our bodies. We're health conscious. We want pure things coming to us. But the moment you talk about moral or spiritual or purity and character, people start to shut down. Well, that's judgmental. Well, that's narrow-minded. Well, that's even arrogant. Well, then you've got arrogant food then. Well, you've got arrogant restaurants then because you don't mind pure eating. But pure character? What's the difference? The Bible defines purity as clean, honest, modest, perfect. I think where we are as a society and as a culture at this moment, we're basically only asking the question, how impure do I want to be? That's what we're asking because we can handle so much. We can. I can handle this. This doesn't bother me. This doesn't affect me. So our question is not how pure are we. Our question is how impure do I want to be? I don't know anybody that would say, I want to be totally impure. I just want to be as icky as I possibly can. I don't hear anybody saying that. But we never ask the question. Never ask the question. How pure can I be? And the immediate question that comes up, well, nobody's perfect. Everybody has problems. Everybody has issues. Job sends that question back to the earliest annals of human history when he says, what is man that he could be pure? Even in Job's day, how's it possible? Man that's born of woman, how could he ever be righteous before a holy God? It's not possible. And our generation says amen. But God says something different. In the book of Titus, Paul says to his young protege, he says that Jesus Christ changes everything. Everything that's natural, everything that's normal, everything that you can expect just by growing up in this world, Jesus is turned upside down and it's not true anymore. It even testifies to the basis of Jewish purity is that all your sacrifices and all your rituals are not enough ever to make you perfect. So you're still unclean even in your rituals. But Titus was told Jesus did make a change. Jesus did change the dynamic. And here's how he says it in Titus 2:14. It says, Jesus Christ gave himself for us. Why? Has nothing to do with love in this verse. Has nothing to do with a longing to be with him where he is in this verse. Here's why he says it's true in this verse. He gave himself for us that he might redeem us. That he might buy us back from what our deeds did to us. We've testified this morning. Our deeds do something to us. What we take into our lives, what we put out of our lives, it affects us. It makes a difference. Sometimes momentary, sometimes lifelong. And we have to carry that because once it's been done, you can't undo what you've done. But he's redeemed us from those deeds and he purified for himself a people. His own special people that are zealous for good works. Do you understand the verse? When Jesus came and his work, changes the impure to the pure. It changes the unrighteous to the righteous. It changes those that are scarred to those that are healed. It changed those that were glad in their sin and rejoiced in their impurity, but now they're zealous to do something good for God. They've changed. Something's changed in them, and it's Jesus Christ. He is the difference. So now when the New Testament talks about conscience or heart or mind or even religion, he doesn't say man's version. He doesn't say best you can do. He doesn't say earthly or sensual and God forbid demonic. Here's how he describes these in the New Testament. You can have a pure conscience. You can have a pure heart. You can have a pure mind. And there is a pure religion. How does God talk about His stuff? He talks about it with not how impure it is, but how pure it can be. That's God's perspective. You see the definite perspective of the world, and honestly, in our speaking of our lives and what is possible, we reveal which wisdom we're listening to. Because earthly wisdom says, you're just human. Earthly wisdom says, that it's not that way it works. It just can't be possible here. It's demonic. The devil's going to say, you can never do it. It can never happen. Look what you've done. Look who you are. Look what they'll think of you. That's the wisdom of this world. God's not saying that. God says, my wisdom that I'm sending down to you, my truth, my reality that I'm sending to you. First of all, James says, number one, it's pure. It's pure. Why? Because God doesn't live in imperfection. He doesn't live in impurity. There's not 10% impurity in heaven. It's all pure. It's all clean. It's all perfect. And that's what benefits He gives to us. When God sends down something, it's going to be pure. When God sends us something, it's going to be perfect. It's going to be clean. It's going to be good. God doesn't know shades. He only knows purity in what He imparts and what He dispenses on His people. Psalmist said in Psalms 18 that if we're pure, you will show yourself to us the same way. Another psalmist in Psalm 19 says, you will enlighten our eyes. In Psalms 24:3, it says, those that are pure, you can ascend the hill of the Lord. You can stand in His holy place. And Jesus added, the pure, you can see God. There's benefits that are coming down from heaven, and it's not coming from a demonic, earthly, sensual source. It's coming from a perfect, a good, a pure source being dispensed into your life. Which is why Paul also said, every good and perfect gift, it didn't come from this earth. It didn't come from under this earth. God has dispensed it from heaven because this earth needs a little bit of goodness. It needs some purity. It needs more heaven on this earth. There should be positive to purity. It should be longed for, not run away from. We shouldn't be ashamed of how pure God calls us to be. We should embrace it as a badge of honor. That I, a child of hell, should in His image shine. It ought to be something we sing, testify, and glory in. Who are you to talk about that? I know where you came from, but you don't know who I met. Along the way, I stopped by Calvary, and everything has changed. My old is gone, my new is here, and purity is my standard now, because that's all my God knows how to do. And when God sends gifts to us continually, here's how the Bible describes it. The psalmist knew in 12:6, he said, the words of the Lord are pure words. When God speaks to you, He's not him-hawing and finding that gray area. He's just telling you the pure, perfect, beautiful truth. That's what He's doing for you. The New Testament says the same thing. Peter says, as newborn babes, you should desire the pure milk of the Word. He knew about clean, spiritual food long before we ever got here. The pure milk of the Word. It's nourishing. It's gratifying. It's satisfying. It's filling. It will help you grow. God doesn't know how to tear down people. God does know how to build a life out of nothing, though. God can certainly tear down the instruments of this world, but He's looking to save people. Can we understand that, Church of the Living God? God's not trying to destroy people. He's giving everything He can to save them, and He's not saving them to impurity. He's saving them to purity, to just like Him and just like His environment in heaven above. But notice that in our lives, sometimes the church does not speak with as clarity as God does. The church has always held up purity of some standard, but sometimes that's not been an invitation. It's been more of a baseball bat. It's not really pursuit. It's more about beating any little instance of impurity that can be found. That's not the will of God. God has come to cleanse, to sanctify, to redeem. You heard the words of Titus. He did not come to beat down. So perhaps the world has its own negative connotation, not simply because they're earthly, but because the church has spoken like James with both salt water and with fresh. You say the fresh is good, then what do you say about the salt water that's coming out of here? What do you say about the bad? What do you say about how you are treating people, how you are living? That's why practice matters. In Philippians 4:8, Paul encouraged that church. He says there's things that you're going to think on, things you're going to meditate on. He said those things ought to be pure. Because if you put pure in, then pure can come out. If you don't put pure in, if you don't have that standard, if anything's okay, then whatever comes out must be okay too. But if you don't like what comes out, then what do you seek for that's coming in? He said you ought to think on these things. And he said there's always going to be a difference. He shared this with Titus as well. He says to the pure, everything's going to be pure. It's not about negative. It's not about tearing down. To the pure, all things are pure. You can find God. I think from this verse, you can find Him anywhere. Anywhere. His glory, His image, His beauty, His purity is going to find its way to the darkest of the hellholes of this world. It's going to find its way there because that's who God is. But to those who are defiled, to the unbelieving, nothing is pure. Now, nothing can be pure. And instead of longing for, they just embrace the impurity and say, that's the beauty. That's what's good. But our souls feel the dissonance. Even sinful souls feel the dissonance, the problem that it comes, even when they can't diagnose the problem. When I think of positive purity, I think of God, I ought to long to be more like you. I ought to long for more of what's heaven than to say, God, what will you accept of earth? I should long for more of what He says is good rather than saying, God, it really don't matter. Because He is pure. Let me touch a little bit on where you're reading in your Bibles in Exodus and Leviticus. When God built a tabernacle, you notice how He built it, and I don't have time to go into it in detail. But the outside, it was with bronze, it was very functional. But on the inside of the tabernacle, how did God decorate His house? Did He say, anything will do? Did He say, just do the best you can? He said, no, I want you to pull out the gold. And I want you to fill the table, cover it with gold. The lampstand, I want you to cover it with pure gold. And when you get into the most holy place, the ark, the mercy seat, I want it all covered with gold. Solomon got that point. He understood that point. And when he made a temple, a permanent dwelling, not only did he do the lampstand, and not only do the table, and not only did he do the altar of incense, and not only did the ark, but even the walls and the ceiling, he covered in pure gold. And notice that the priests mostly worked on the outside, but when they went into the presence of God, they were surrounded with purity. They were surrounded with the best. They were surrounded with the gold, the elaborate purity that was displayed there. And as I read the end of the Bible, when I think about that city that God has built that's coming down, what did He use? What's the stuff of His city that He's going to dwell in. Why? It's of gold. Why the walls, why the city walls, or the walls of the buildings in the city, they're made of gold. The streets, they are made of gold. And they're made of pure gold. Purer than we've ever seen. For their description doesn't even compare with anything we have. So God's presence in the Old Testament dwelt in purity. The New Testament says that in the end, when we all dwell with God in His city, it's going to be surrounded with purity. So when I think about positive purity, I think about God is in the midst of purity. So if I long for more purity, what I'm longing for is more of Him. And when I think about what I can get away with or how impure do I want to be, I'm saying I don't need any more of your presence. Because I'll just live in the earthly, the sensual, even the demonic. But the thing of heaven is pure. I had to pray. I'll tell you, God got a hold of me before He ever let me preach this. And I said, Lord, even in my interactions, even in my learning of all the course of this world and how it works, I said, Lord, even in that, it taints me. Not taints by touching, but I begin to think. I begin to worry about the things of this world. I begin to wrestle over the way this world works. When I ought to say, God, purify me. God, give me your wisdom. God, give me what's of you. God, I want to be pure because I want more of you. And dear Heavenly Father, this is your temple. So, oh God, let me fill it with the purest that I can. And dear God, I will purify myself so that you may bring more of who you are into me. I'm missing out on God if I settle for the way the world works. Say all that you want, and there was many to say about our forebears, but they wanted a people that were pure because they wanted God to be in the house. They wanted God, and I was told many a times, God will not dwell in an unclean temple. That's not Bible, but it is true nonetheless. God lives in purity. So church, let's think this thing through. Not how much impurity can I live with, but God, would you make me more pure? Yeah. Would you make me more like you? And I'm not just talking about moral. I'm not talking about sometimes relationship issues with the only way we ever talk about purity. But in every way. You look at James chapter 3, and he says, if you control your tongue, that's a pure thing to do. If you can control it, and if you can keep that spring just flowing fresh water, and if you can be a fig tree instead of an olive tree, if you could keep doing, if you could be who you need to be, was his essence. If you could be mine, my child that produces my fruit. That's the purity that he's talking about. Not in one area, in every area. That's positive purity. I want more of who you are. Would you bow your heads? What are we missing? Because we're not pure enough. I'm not saying you're standing before God. Please don't misunderstand me. But what we settle for. If I were to open up a stand right beside the produce stand in the grocery store, and if I were to use their cast-offs, they're old, they're used, even the ones that's fallen on the dirt and been stepped on, and if I were to put it up in a stand, I don't imagine many people would stop by for business. I don't imagine that'd be good enough for them. I don't imagine they'd say, okay, it doesn't really matter what I eat, so I'll take that because it's obviously cheaper, and it's a banana's a banana, whether it's black or not. Banana's a banana, whether it's been stepped on or not. So I'll take that. Nobody would stop by my stand because it's not pure enough for me. God says, I dwell in purity. Everything I send is pure, it's good, it's clean, it's right. So church, I want more of that stuff, more than the stuff of this world. And it's not up to my neighbor. They can't taint me. It's what I long for. Would you stand?